Hello, everyone. Today, I invite you to sit down for a moment and listen to a story that is simple, yet deeply powerful. This isn't a fairy tale, nor is it a dramatic film. It's a true journey. The story of Tu Nha, a mother who has endured many wounds, and Kiet, a kind-hearted young man who entered her life like a ray of light. Two people, two different paths, but they share one thing in common: a belief in kindness and the strength to rise from what once seemed impossible to overcome. So, what happened in their lives? And why have millions been moved by this story? Stay with me until the end, because every detail in this journey might just touch something deep within you. The morning broke softly over the sawmill. The golden sun filtered through the dusty windows, catching in the air like tiny sparks. Everything was still, peaceful, except for the gentle rhythm of Kiet's pen as he moved from log to log, jotting down notes with quiet precision. This was his routine. It wasn't glamorous and it certainly wasn't easy, but he treated every step like it mattered, because to him it did. Measuring the grain, checking the texture, examining the cuts, he did it all with a quiet pride that didn't need applause. Today's shipment? It was some of the best timber they'd seen in weeks. Kiet could tell just by the way the wood felt under his fingertips. He ran his hand along one thick plank, nodding slightly. "Solid quality," he whispered to himself, a small smile tugging at his lips. But it wasn't just a good day because of the wood. Today was payday, the one day each month where the guys around the mill loosened up a little, joked more, laughed louder. It meant food on the table, bills paid, maybe even a small treat for the kids. For Kiet, though, payday had come to mean something more. It was a checkpoint, a pause, a chance to reflect on what he was working toward. He wasn't just building someone else's business, he was trying to build a future. Something he couldn't quite name yet, but he felt it pulling him forward. As he leaned against a beam and stared out toward the road beyond the sawmill, a face floated into his thoughts. Tu Nha. He sighed, his expression softening. Does she even know I've been showing up? He hadn't told her. Not really. He just kept coming around, helping when he could, leaving small things behind, fixing the fence, dropping off food. He didn't want to intrude. He just wanted to be near, but deep down, he wondered if she ever noticed. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not quite sadness, not quite longing. A quiet ache. His feelings for her had crept in slowly, carefully, like rain soaking into dry earth. It wasn't just about gratitude anymore. Somewhere along the way, it had become something deeper. He shook his head and let out a breath, staring down at his worn boots. Why am I hiding? He muttered to himself. Why am I pretending I don't care? The answer didn't come easily. But what did come was a quiet resolve. I should be there for her little girl. We've both been through so much. Don't we deserve something good? But then came the doubt, the kind that whispers in your ear when you start to hope for too much. What if her husband comes back? Would she still want me around? Am I just a placeholder? He didn't have answers, only questions. But the weight of wondering was heavier than any load he'd ever lifted at the mill. The screech of the saw blade spinning to life cut through his thoughts, jarring him back into the present. The buzz of cicadas in the heat blended with the sharp hum of the machinery, creating a strange harmony that somehow made him laugh. He chuckled softly. Come on, Kiet, don't be ridiculous. Still, Something shifted in him in that moment. It wasn't boldness, it wasn't even confidence, it was clarity. He couldn't keep waiting around wishing from a distance. If he wanted answers, if he wanted peace, he had to show up. So that afternoon, as the sun began to lean west and the shadows stretched long across the gravel roads, Kiet made a decision. He packed up his notebook, slung his bag over his shoulder, and headed out. He was going to see Tu Nha and her daughter. Not to confess anything, not to make big declarations, just to be there, to see for himself where things stood, not just with her, but with himself. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting a battle or carrying a burden. Sometimes it's simply walking up to the people you care about and letting them see your heart. The sun was beating down hard, casting waves of heat over the quiet countryside. Tu Nha stood at the edge of her little garden, wiping sweat from her brow as she took in the patch of earth she had poured so much love into. The vegetables were hanging in there, but the weeds were creeping in, and the soil looked like it hadn't been fed in weeks. She let out a breath and made up her mind. All right, time to fertilize and clear out the weeds. Without a second thought, she slipped off her worn outer shirt, grabbed her hoe, and got straight to work. The rhythmic thud of metal hitting dirt echoed through the air as she moved swiftly, her hands steady, her mind focused. Out here, under the open sky, this was her way of surviving and healing. Meanwhile, not far away, Kiet was making his way through the hills. His motorbike wound along a narrow, bumpy road shaded by thick trees and dotted with the occasional songbird. He wasn't just out for a ride, he had work to do. There was a new lot of timber coming in soon, and he wanted to check the site, take some notes, and plan ahead. As he climbed higher, the view opened up. Rolling hills blanketed in deep green, birdsong drifting in the air. It was beautiful, peaceful, the kind of place that made you forget, even for a moment, about the weight you carried. Further down the road, the path narrowed and dipped into a densely wooded area. Kiet slowed down and eventually stopped when something bright caught his eye. A flowering plant, vibrant and full of life, growing wild near the base of a tree. He crouched down, smiling. This would look amazing in Tu Nha's garden, he thought. She'd love this. It was a small thing, but it mattered. He was always thinking of her, of the quiet strength she carried, of the struggle she never complained about. Something about her had carved out space in his heart, slowly and gently. And now even a wildflower reminded him of her. After tucking the plant safely into his bag, Kiet walked a bit further and stopped by a small stream. He sat down on a rock and let the cool air wash over him. The gentle sound of water trickling past his feet stirred something in him, a memory, his childhood. The laughter, the adventures, the scraped knees and bare feet running through these very woods. He looked around and couldn't help but smile. Man, those were the days, he whispered to himself. The trees hadn't changed much, but he had. Life had brought its share of hardship, responsibility, and uncertainty. But even now, with everything he was facing, there was something keeping him grounded. Something, or rather, someone. Tu Nha and her child. He wasn't sure when it started, but he had become a part of their lives in small but meaningful ways. Helping out when he could. Fixing things. Showing up. He never expected anything in return. He just knew it felt right. Like this was where he was meant to be. As he stood up and dusted off his pants, Kiet took one last look around. The forest, the hills, the stream. All of it reminded him of where he came from. But Tu Nha? She reminded him of where he wanted to go. The little bamboo house slowly came into view, tucked beneath a canopy of rustling leaves. Sunlight filtered through the branches, scattering golden light across the path like it was guiding him home. In the distance, the soft thud of a hoe striking earth echoed from the garden. Kiet stepped quietly toward the sound, not wanting to disturb the peaceful rhythm. There she was, Tu Nha, bent over her garden, completely absorbed in her work. She hadn't noticed him yet. For a moment, he just stood there, watching her. Watching the way she moved with purpose. How even under the sun, she carried herself with quiet grace. Then, in a warm, steady voice, he called out, "Tu Nha, take a break. You've been at it long enough." Startled, she turned around, her eyes wide. "Kiet!" she gasped, and before he could react, she was already running toward him. She wrapped her arms around him in a sudden, warm embrace. The kind that made time stand still. Kiet froze for a second, caught off guard. There was something about her hug, genuine, full of emotion, that made his heart skip. He wasn't used to this kind of closeness, but he didn't pull away. He let himself stay in that moment. Later, the two of them sat down at a small wooden table, worn from the years but still sturdy. It felt natural, like it always did with her. They began reminiscing, filling the quiet afternoon with old memories. "Where were you yesterday?" Tu Nha asked, a playful pout in her voice. "I went by the workshop, but you weren't there." Kiet looked away, just slightly embarrassed. "I had a few things to take care of. Sorry, I wasn't around." There was a brief pause before he glanced at her again. With a deep breath, he reached across the table and gently took her hand. "Thank you for the lunchbox yesterday," he said softly. "It meant more than you think." The mood shifted. It wasn't awkward, just tender, quiet. "I mean it, Tu Nha," he continued. "I'll always be here for you and your little girl. You're not alone." Tu Nha's eyes softened. She smiled a little more at peace. "Thank you, Kiet." She told him to rest, to sit and relax, but Kiet couldn't just sit still while she was out there working in the heat. "Let me help. It'll go faster if we work together." Tu Nha nodded, touched by his sincerity, and led him back down to the garden. She hadn't expected him to show up today, and it made her feel seen, cared for. Laughter soon filled the air, light, unforced, real, the kind of laughter that feels like home. They chatted as they worked, teasing each other between tasks. Their shirts soaked with sweat, but they didn't seem to mind. The joy, the connection, made the work feel light. From time to time, Kiet would glance at her. There was something calming about being by her side. This little woman, he thought, she's something special. As they sat down for a short break at the garden table, a soft cry rang out from the house. Tu Nha jumped up. Her daughter had woken from her nap. She rushed inside and moments later returned with her little girl in her arms. Kiet's eyes lit up. It had been a while since he'd seen her. That sweet, sleepy face he'd grown so fond of. He reached out and gently stroked her hair. "Do you remember me, little one?" he asked, smiling. The baby blinked, then giggled as he tickled her chin. "Let me hold her," he said, and Tu Nha carefully placed the child in his arms. They laughed, played, and shared a few quiet moments that felt like something out of a dream. Not perfect, not polished, just real. Later, Tu Nha came out from the back garden with a freshly picked pineapple in hand. She held it up proudly. "This one's ripe," she said with a grin. "Let me cut it for you. It's really sweet." Kiet laughed, shaking his head. "Only if you let me help clean up after." In that small bamboo house with its creaky doors and sunlit porch, there was nothing extravagant. No big gestures or dramatic twists, just the simple presence of two people finding peace in each other's company. And sometimes that's more than enough.